First of all, I just want to say welcome. It's great to have you joining us today with Fellowship Weaverville. Today we're going to be in Joshua chapter 10 and actually concluding our series in Joshua. Yes, I know the book isn't finished, but we're going to move on to some different things as we move into a season of home churches moving forward. But today we're going to get into Joshua 10. So I wanted to start with this story of me back when I was in school, high school. I was 15 and 16. I was a junior, the 11th grade, and I took a chemistry class. And for some reason, I got placed kind of in the back of the class. It was assigned seating. And so there in the back of the class, I met this guy named Brian. Now, I need to tell you a little bit about Brian. He was full grown. He had a full beard. And as I got to know him, as I got to talk to him, I realized that Brian told me that he was 21 years old. And he also had a wife and kid. I'm not joking, true story. So I'm like 15 or 16 in this chemistry class, sitting next to this grown man with a wife, kid, and full-time job, but he hadn't quite finished his high school yet. And so he was just the nicest guy. And I remember just thinking, this guy seems pretty smart, so I don't think he's not graduating because of his intelligence. And then I never really got the courage to ask him why he hadn't actually graduated high school. And then about halfway through the semester, he gradually started coming to class less and less. And so kind of started to piece the puzzle together, realizing that Brian just didn't show up. And so it went from him not coming to class like once a week to maybe he wasn't there twice a week. And then finally he just quit showing up almost altogether. And he'd come like once a week, twice a week. Well, I remember one day he came into class, which was always a surprise when Brian would show up. And the teacher, called him up to the desk. And no matter how quietly they tried to have the conversation, I heard the teacher say to Brian, you've taken this class 3 times. And always happens about halfway through, you stop showing up. He says, you know the information, you know what you need to know to get out of this class, to graduate high school, but I just need you to show up. And sometimes, like we're going to talk about today, sometimes we just need to show up. Now, hate to move on without telling you the rest of the story, but the reality of the situation is I don't remember what happened. I don't remember if Brian actually ended up coming to class again. I think he did, but cut me some slack. I was like 16 years old, so I just don't remember. But, showing up for us is a big deal. And we're taught so often in life, work hard, you'll see the benefits. Work hard, you'll see the payoff. But the reality is, sometimes that's just not true. Sometimes we work hard and try to work hard to earn what hard work should deserve, and someone else gets that payoff. Sometimes we work hard and we want to see the right thing done, but sometimes the hard work still leads to injustice. So there's this sense of we're taught the parallel between hard work and payoff, but the reality of the situation is that just doesn't happen sometimes. So today, in Joshua chapter 10, we're going to look at this really just fascinating passage. And just to give you like a recap, just to set the scene for us, we have to remember that the people of Israel are God's chosen people. And so God had kind of come to them and said, I'm going to make you my people. You're going to be my people. I'm going to be your God. And so he had given them these series of promises. The first promise was just what I just said. I'm going to be your God. I'm going to be the one who is for you to worship. And in that will come this relationship. You'll be in communion with me. And so that was one of the promises that God had given the people of Israel. The second promise that came with that was God had told them, one day I'm going to take you into a land that is the promised land. It is for you, and it's going to be a prosperous land, a fruitful land. It's going to kind of be a place where we can be in relationship together. And so he had given them that promise. And so we see these promises that in Joshua, when they crossed the Jordan, when they defeated Jericho, when they began to enter into the promised land, they started to see the promises of God. And we as a church have been looking at God's fulfillment of the promise and how the promise of God requires us to show up and depend on the provision of God. So often we want to say, if we work hard, then God will favor me. If we work hard, then God will give me this thing. If we work hard. And today, I really believe this key idea is just that God just needs us to show up. God just needs us to be there. He needs us to show up so he can do the work. But before we get into this really interesting text, I wanted to ask you, do you have a promise from God? And just pause for 5 seconds and answer that question. Do you have a promise from God? Okay. Now, if you do, keep it in your mind. Keep it in your thoughts. If you don't, let me read you a few texts, a few scriptures that are promises of God for you. The first is this: be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. And here's the promise: he will not leave you nor forsake you. Then it says, and that's Deuteronomy 31:6. Then it says here in Hebrews, it says, that's Hebrews 13:5. It says, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Now that might be you. You are going through an economic tough time. Work has been lean. There hasn't been a lot of money. And that Hebrews 13:5 says, keep your life free from the love of money. Be content with what you have, which I know is so hard, but the promise is this: I will never leave you nor forsake you. Then it says in Jeremiah 29:13, if you seek me, you will find me. And I know there's those in our group and those watching today and listening that just feel like God is so far. And it says right there in Jeremiah 29:13, if you seek me, you will find me. And this is one of my favorite passages regarding your calling. 1 Thessalonians 5:24. I quote this one all the time. The one who calls you is faithful, and he will do it. If God has given you a call on your life, he will be faithful to provide you, to bring that true fruition. And then there's those of us that need to hold on to this promise in John 14:3. It says, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, so that you may also be where I am. So let me ask you again, what are your promises? And if you need one of those promises, take it. Okay, let's jump into the text. Joshua chapter 10. This is a very interesting text. It's a battle scene. And so there was this group of people from chapter 9, actually. And this group of people knew that the invading Israelites were strong and mighty and that God was on their side. So they dressed in old tattered clothes, and they came to Israel pretending to be travelers and tricked Israel into making a covenant with them that when Israel fought all the rest of the people in the land, they would not fight them, the Gibeonites. And so that happens. And then the 5 different tribes in this new promised land that Israel has to go and conquer, 5 of these tribes figure out that the Gibeonites have now partnered up with the Israelites. And so these 5 kings say, okay, let's go wage war. It says in Joshua 10:5, and the kings were about to wage war against Gibeon. And so here's what happens, and let me just read this for you. This is Joshua 10:6 through 8. It says, and the men of of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp, saying, "Do not relax your hand from your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us, for all the kings of Amorites who dwell in the hill country are gathered against us." So Joshua went up from Gilgal. He and all the people of war went with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you." Can you imagine God coming to you and saying, "Do not fear this problem before you, for I have given it into your hands. Not a man shall stand before you." And I don't say that rhetorically. I say that to actually think, what if God came to you and gave you that promise, came to you and just said, "Do not fear them, for I've given them into your hands. None of them will stand against you." What things in your life do you need God on your side for right now? What are those things that are bigger than that you think you can handle by yourself? What's plaguing your mind? What's keeping you up at night? What's giving you anxiety? What's taking a lot of your energy that you just don't have? What things do you need God on your side for right now? So let me keep reading and actually finish the story. Then we're going to take just a few minutes to break this down. I really do want to keep this brief today. It says, "So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched all night from Gilgal." Now you need to know, from Gilgal to Gibeon was 15 miles, all uphill. I don't know which of us are into backpacking and hiking like I am, but most of us aren't real keen about doing a 15-mile straight uphill hike. But that's what these people did. It says this, so they marched the whole night to Gilgal, and says this, "And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon, and chased them by the way of the ascent, and struck them as far as Azahai and Makadai." Yeah, I know I butchered those. And it says, "And as they fled before Israel while they were still going down the ascent, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the son of Israel killed with the sword." Pause. The Lord promised it to Joshua and said, "Go on. They're not going to stand before you. I'll fight this battle for you. I just need you to show up." Joshua marched all night with his men. They showed up. The Lord threw them into a panic. Like this is all the Lord. Look, like the Lord threw them into a panic. He threw down large stones from heaven upon them. And it says there were more who died from the hailstones. There were those who died from the sword of Joshua's men. The Lord said, "Joshua, just show up. I'll fight this battle for you." And that's exactly what happened. And then it says in verse 12, "And at that time Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel. And he had said in the sight of Israel," craziest passage in the Bible right here, or one of, "Sun, stand still at Gibeon, the moon as well. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance upon their enemies." What a crazy prayer, that the battle is going in Israel's favor. Joshua knows that if night falls, all these enemies can go and hide in the woods and they can escape. The battle will not be complete. They'll have to reconvene to fight the battle again. He knew the Lord had the victory. He knew momentum was on his side. And so he had the guts to just pray, "Sun, stand still." And it says right here, it says, "Is it not written in the book of Jashar, the sun stopped in the midst of heaven and did not hurry to set for about a whole day. There has been no day like it before or since, when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel." What a gutsy prayer. What a bold prayer. What a faith-filled prayer. And I just love that passage. It's the only, how do we explain it scientifically? I I don't know, but I don't think that's the point of miracles. I think the point of miracles is to open up our eyes to the power of God, open up our eyes to the promise of God and the provision of God, and open up our eyes about what it just means to proceed in faith, to just show up and let God do the work. And my prayer over us as his church and as his people and as his children is that we'll show up and let God do the work. We'll show up and put our trust in him to do the work. So let me start to wrap this up with just two additional thoughts. First is a question. What battles in your life do you need to give to the Lord? The first one I can think of is just the sin that you're dealing with, the things that you're struggling with, the things that you just feel like keep pulling you back into that trap and holding you bondage. The second is your calling. What has God called you to that feels just too big right now? Could it be parenting, or you're in a relationship that's really hard and you just aren't happy and you're not finding content, and you know you're supposed to be with this person, but you're just not clicking, you're just not feeling it like you used to. And so that's an area that perhaps is a battle that you need to give to the Lord. And the final one is maybe you have some enemies in your life. Maybe, and I don't mean like people you need to go and fight. I mean people that are a drain on you, people that hurt you, people that you have unresolved conflict with. Maybe you need that battle to be given to the Lord. You just need God to show up, and you want to hear that promise of do not fear them, for I will stand before you and you will not fall. Now, how do we do this? You know, it's not a formula. It never has been. It never will be. But as I was thinking through this, how do we as God's children do this? Get to this point of faith, of showing up and let God do the work. And one verse I thought of, Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. And that's just a promise of God. And the part that we can do, the part that we can be responsible for, the part that we can show up for is seeking first the kingdom of God. Seek first the things of God. Seek first in our thoughts. God, what would you have for me? What do you want in this situation? How can I discern what you want? And as you know, kind of some sub points underneath this about seeking first the kingdom is we just have to continue to die to ourselves, to die to our selfish needs and ambitions. And then it says, and to take up our cross and follow him. And the cross is always a burden. The cross is always a weight. And so as we die to self, deal with sin, deal with selfishness, deal with our flesh, that's a part of taking up that cross, of living in humility and service to other people, considering ourselves not greater than others, but Christ, the one who died for us, that's who we're serving, and therefore serving other people. And then the final thing I want to share, and I believe this is applicable again with lots of what we're dealing with today, have kingdom eyes. And what I mean by that is have kingdom eyes. Know that Jesus is Lord. Know that he reigns supreme. Know that in regards to our health, it's him that's in charge. Know that regards into our wealth and our money or lack thereof, it's him that's the Lord. It's him that is reigning. And in regard to other people, as we serve, know that our service is to the Lord, and we can be humble because Jesus did that first. And so as we look at this incredible battle in Joshua, the incredible promises of God, I hope you've been reminded of the promises in Scripture that he has given to you as his children. And I hope that you know the battles of your life belong to the Lord. He will bring you the victory. You just need to show up.